Excuse me, and I hope you don't mind me saying, but you look like you're here for a podcast. Well, here's one for ya. Welcome back to Off the Rails, your fortnightly podcast in which I, the offrailgamer, address you, my Orgonauts, on matters of all things video game. And if you're new around here, I say welcome, and please make yourself at home. We've still got some mince pies left over that old Saint Nick couldn't manage, and there's some cold cuts in the fridge you can help yourself to with some crackers and kettle chips. Did you have a lovely winterfall, listeners? I hope that if you were celebrating, you got everything you wished for, and if you weren't celebrating, well, I hope you had a lovely time however you spent it since last we spoke. I thought that this week, being our last episode of 2023, we'd have a look back at the year that was, and I'll edit together some clips from previous episodes. Only no, let's not do that, because this isn't a 90s sitcom, and I always switched off when it was a clip show because I despised that format of episode. So for today at least, you'll be getting all new and original content. One thing that's not entirely new is the general order of things. However, we've no listeners' whispers this week, and I've also not had the chance to go scouting for gaming news. But don't let that concern you, friends, as I'm hoping I'll still have enough to prattle on about for close to half an hour, so I'm hoping you won't end up feeling too shortchanged. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'd best get round to the main focus of my introductory segment and get all my plugs for my socials in. Firstly, and I know you're already listening to this and therefore already know where you can find my podcast, but what if you've stumbled across it on a platform you don't regularly use, or even don't much care for? What if you're listening on Google Podcasts, for instance? Well, you can eventually listen to Off the Rails on Google Podcasts, but they seem to take an age to publish new episodes. You could also listen on Amazon Music or Spotify. Then there's my YouTube, Twitter, whoops, that should have been X, Twitch, and TikTok. I'm yet to really get going on TikTok and Twitch, but they're worth keeping an eye on as I am planning on streaming more in 2024. I'm not verified on any of these platforms, but I have posted links to them all in the podcast episode description. Oh, and I've also posted my email address, offrailgamer@gmail.com. which is hands down the best way to get in touch with me if you have any comments, queries, feedback, or suggestions that you'd like me to read out and respond to in the Listener's Whispers segment of the next podcast. Please don't be shy. I'd honestly love to hear from you. All I ever ask is that you keep your comments clean and not too mean. And with that, we can now move away from the intro and into the section in which I tell you all about the games that I've been playing recently. We've been busy on YouTube recently. Close to 2 weeks ago I played some PS1 racing games, including Ridge Racer Type 4, Porsche Challenge, and a motorbike game that I've forgotten the name of because it wasn't Road Rash. Quick aside, I really want to put some PS1 Road Rash up on the channel, but I don't want to get in trouble for all the music in it. So I guess I'll have to come up with a suitable alternative so that it doesn't just turn into a silent film. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. I was really awful at the aforementioned PS1 games. Unable to even complete a race in Porsche Challenge, let alone place at all. Oh, and I think I got lapped twice in the motorbikes game. But fear not, for I returned a week later and played something altogether more chill, with a little bit of unpacking. This is a game in which we check in with the main character every time they move house throughout their life, and we, as the player, unpack the cardboard boxes and place the contents appropriately. This starts simply enough when the character is a child and we only have to deal with their bedroom, but on YouTube we looked at a later level when they've moved into a shared student pad and can place things in your bedroom, the living room, dining room, kitchen and bathroom. Then, for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, or 24th, 25th and 26th of December, I played some Tin Hearts, in which you guide a parade of clockwork toy soldiers to the level exit by placing objects to change the course they follow. It was a little bit like Lemmings, but, to quote a Steve Coogan character from the day-to-day, no one died. Tin Hearts is pretty slow-paced and chill, which just seemed to me to be the right vibes for the holiday season, really. And in fairness, I had more fun with this title than I feared I might when I first started playing it. Thinking ahead to next year, there are a few games I'd like to put up on the channel, but I think I'll need to give myself more time to create the content I'm envisioning. An issue for 2024 mark to deal with. Off-channel, I've been playing a lot of the Microsoft Solitaire collection. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. It's a collection of card games that can be played solo. My particular favourite is Pyramid, in which you match pairs of cards that add up to 13. For example, 10 and 3, 8 and 5, Jack and 2, Queen and Ace, etc. The exception being Kings, which don't need to be paired off to be cleared. The Steam Winter Sale is on, and I picked up a few games, including Red Dead Redemption 2, which I can't wait to be able to take on the go with me, Planet Base, which I'm yet to start, and Dawn of Man, which you may have seen. You take a group of people from Stone Age beginnings right up to modern times. Play is real-time strategy, so it's a bit like Age of Empires, only perhaps with a little more focus on realism. It's hard to say yet, as I've only enjoyed one sitting with the game so far. I've also finally started my first playthrough of Life is Strange, although I've literally only completed the first 2 chapters so far. I remember watching Jacksepticeye play this one on YouTube years ago, and I've wanted to have a go at it myself ever since. I kind of wish I was experiencing it for the first time, as I remember the big plot reveals, but I am nonetheless enjoying my time in Arcadia Bay, even if it is kinda grim at times. Life is Strange is another branching story game, a genre that I probably have to start regarding as my second favourite type of game after the old on-rail shooters. It ranks up there with titles like Lake, Road 96, Oxenfree, and the Telltale games, of which I've only actually played Game of Thrones and the 2 Batman games so far. Maybe I'll play Telltale's The Walking Dead for our next season of scare. Additionally, I picked up God of War Ragnarok in PlayStation's Winter Sale. I haven't got too far into it yet, so you needn't worry about spoilers, but I am thoroughly enjoying what I've played of it so far. I'm honestly not surprised it did as well as it did at the Game Awards this year. And lastly, our Dungeons & Dragons campaign continued last week, and I'm beginning to feel more initiated now, starting to have a clue of what I'm doing. And that's pretty much what I've been playing recently, I think. So, I guess we can turn our attention now to the main part of the show. "2023. What a year, eh? It wasn't all bad, if you're a gamer at least. Thank goodness we've had the warmth and comfort of our video games, into which we can escape the harsh realities of this increasingly cold and heartless world a few at the top of the pile have decided is adequate for their needs. But don't worry, I'm not going to dwell on IRL current affairs. That'd be far too depressing an end to the year. Instead, I want to look back at some of the good times we've shared together here and on YouTube, along with some of 2023's most notable gaming releases, and some of the titles I've thoroughly enjoyed over the last 12 months, whether old or new. We kickstarted the year back in February with Hogwarts Legacy. Or I did, at least. I waited in great anticipation for this game, But did it live up to expectations? Well, kind of. When I first got to the school and started exploring the halls and corridors, I was genuinely awed. Gameplay was smooth and I couldn't fault the controls at all. I must confess, I had hoped for something more akin to Bully though, with a greater focus on timetabled lessons and more severe consequences for breaking curfews. I was also a little disappointed in the end game, which just came to a stop all of a sudden. Yes, there was a big boss fight, but somehow things had felt like they were building to something greater. The world map was very large, but beyond simple exploration to satisfy one's own curiosity, vast tracts of it felt empty, which resulted in my feeling that a smaller map would have suited better, allowing a greater focus on a more in-depth plot, or more densely populated world. In its defence, there were a nice variety of side quests available, and I did find the main quests compelling for the most part, even if it did feel a little bit repetitive after a while. I had fun with Hogwarts Legacy, and I can see myself replaying it in a couple of years' time. It's a good game, just not quite great, in my opinion. Back in March, we saw the release of Storyteller for Nintendo Switch and PC, and now you can even play it on Netflix. Storyteller is an amusing little title in which you solve puzzles by choosing the frames for a short comic strip. It won't take you more than a few hours to complete, but it's delivered in an interesting style, and I personally had a lot of fun with it. It was also around this time that I played through 2018's God of War for the first time. Now, I had only heard good things about this game, yet still I approached with caution, hoping that I wouldn't be disappointed. And I wasn't. God of War is a fantastically well-paced game with a combat system that really works at making you feel like a genuine badass, and puzzles that make you feel like a little brainiac when you work out how to solve them. Not only that, but the game is set against Norse mythology and the Viking aesthetic, of course, which only boosts my opinion of it further. On top of all this, just when I started to feel like the game needed to start wrapping things up, it did just that. I honestly think 2018's God of War is the absolutely perfect length game, neither dragging on nor cutting short and rushing anything. Next, I ran with the Van der Linde gang again in Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2, my all-time favourite game to date. Sure, it's become popular for people to whinge about the prologue taking too long, but I disagree. I love to try and fully immerse myself in the world every time I play, and every time I finish playing, I find it really difficult choosing the next game to try and follow it. On this occasion, I jumped into AEW Fight Forever's career mode. Fight Forever is a nicely polished wrestling game, but could benefit from a larger roster and perhaps something akin to Universe mode from the WWE games. It was fun, but I felt its replayability somewhat limited in all honesty. Definitely hoping for a follow-up with more to do though. And then July gave us Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals. Just 2 weeks ago, I waxed lyrical about my fondness of Oxenfree, and I have to say I was just as taken in by the sequel. Set years later, you play as a new park ranger on your first night in Camino Coast. Things quickly take a turn for the weird, as you're tasked with placing radio receivers around the coastline. There are a group of kids who seem to be up to no good, and you'll spend half the night following them around and trying to undo their schemes. Being still a somewhat recent release, and just in case my last podcast has persuaded you to check out these titles, I don't want to spoil too much for you now. But when I heard we were getting a sequel to Oxenfree, I got very excited indeed, and I'm pleased to say that it lived up to the hype I'd created for it in my own mind. 2023 gave us the following games that I've still not gotten around to playing yet. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. In fairness, I still need to go back and play Jedi Fallen Order. The thing that's deterred me from playing these is that they're described as being Soulsborne-esque, so while I'd certainly gawp at how stunning they look, I fear I just don't have the patience required to tackle them. We also got Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but again, I'm yet to play Breath of the Wild even. Now, I do plan to get round to these at some point, when I've saved up enough coin to be able to buy them. That's the problem with Nintendo never dropping prices or having sales on first-party titles. And another game that I'm really looking forward to halving in price is the recently released Spider-Man 2. I've really enjoyed the first two games in the series, and everyone who has played 2 already has absolutely raved about it. I'm less bothered about the Lord of the Rings Gollum game though, which has been met with a lot of negativity since its release midway through the year. It's a shame really, as I know I wasn't alone in hoping for something good to come out of this title. It certainly had promise, but unfortunately little more by all accounts. What about YouTube then? What do we get up to over there? Well, of course, we played some Play It video, poker and blackjack. And in this title, we found a very strong contender for the worst game ever made that isn't fundamentally broken. On the flip side, we had a look at Stray and played as Cat Gandalf, or Catgalf, if you will, exploring some kind of futuristic post-apocalyptic city overrun with weird bug things. We checked in on some of the new courses in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which reminds me, I think the last 8 tracks should have been released this month, so I must hop on and check those out at some point. We also looked at some other kart races in the truly awful Woody Woodpecker Racing, and the much better Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. In all seriousness, Woody Woodpecker Racing could be a contender alongside Play It Video Poker. But we delivered the real horror during our second annual Season of Scare, of course, with games like Hexen, which is a decent enough Doom clone first person. Well, I was only armed with a knuckle duster, so not shooter exactly. We also had a look at Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights, which pleasantly surprised me again in terms of controls and how Scooby handled. And we wrapped up on Halloween night with some Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube. There were 2 more games that I was excited for this year, the first of which was Star Trek Resurgence, a game developed by the team that I believe used to be Telltale, and as such, this is another terrific branching storyline game following the crew of science vessel the Resolute. Trying to avoid spoilers, I will say the inclusion of Ambassador Spock and a cameo from Jonathan Frakes as Captain William Riker were both really nice touches. The other game I was most eagerly anticipating was Cities Skylines 2. The console release has been pushed back to spring 2024, but I played a little on PC Game Pass. Unfortunately, this title hasn't released without its share of issues either, including being unable to run on many machines. Apparently, Paradox included so much detail, including magazines that can be read if you zoom in on shop windows, that you need a supercomputer to be able to actually run it. What I will say though, is that I have been able to get it to run, and it's good fun, including new ways to buy land so you have greater control managing the borders of your city. And that, friends, is my summary of 2023, but before I go, let us look forward to 2024 and beyond. Don't forget, we're getting remakes of Tomb Raider 1, 2 and 3 on Valentine's Day. That T-Rex doesn't know what's coming. And of course, December 2023 gave us the first genuine trailer for GTA 6. Scheduled for release in 2025, it's still a fair way off until we get to return to Vice City, but it's still something to look forward to. Guys, thank you for listening, and thank you for sticking with me this year. I hope you all have a very happy new year. New content should be going up on YouTube this Saturday if I get my finger out and record it. Otherwise, I'll see you next year. Bye!